Chapter 207 Slaughtering a Flood Dragon and Victory. Spoils under Han Li's control, the golden light brick treasure talisman manifested the magic treasure's material existence after a brief moment. A golden, foot-long brick floated into midair, light shining in all directions. The spiritual power inside of Han Li, like flooding river water, poured unstoppably into this brick. Not long after, 1/3 of his magic power had been sucked away. This caused the gold light above his head to become even more dazzling. One simply would not dare to look at it directly. While the young woman was using all her energy to enclose the inky flood dragon, she was closely watching Han Li's every movement. When she saw that gold brick emerge, she finally let go of her originally somewhat perturbed state of mind. She knew that Han Li did not lie and that this treasure talisman really could break through the demonic beast's defenses. It seemed as if the inky flood dragon could also detect the discouraging turn of events. Its two claws tenaciously grabbed the two sides of the band, and its attempts to escape became even more violent. It actually caused the young woman's vermilion bird band to begin to tremble. This caused the young woman's expression to change, and she hastily shouted at Han Li, "Hurry up, it's about to escape." When Han Li heard this, he did not dare to hesitate and pointed his finger at the treasure talisman on his forehead. In an instant, the gold brick flew with a whiz towards the inky flood dragon, and halfway to its destination it suddenly began to metamorphose drastically, becoming like a small mountain, ferociously smashing down at the inky flood dragon. The struggling inky flood dragon knew that the situation was far from good, but its two green eyes suddenly glinted ominously, and it opened its mouth, causing the purple liquid that Han Li was very afraid of to spurt out again. It blocked the falling golden brick perfectly, actually causing it to have no way of descending for a while. Seeing this, the young woman and Han Li were both surprised. Han Li had to focus on controlling the golden brick, so he could only stare helplessly at it, unable to do anything, but the young woman bit her apricot lips and pulled out a yellow pearl from her bosom. With a raise of her hand, she slammed it towards the demonic beast, which was in a deadlock with the golden brick. With a bang, the pearl slammed into the head region of the inky flood dragon and immediately burst open. Instantly, a small cloud of yellow fog shrouded the flood dragon's body, causing the inky flood dragon to begin to howl in panic. Naturally, the purple liquid that was being shot out also stopped. Without the purple liquid to block, the somewhat weakened tip of light from the golden brick descended at once, perfectly and solidly slamming onto the flood dragon's body. A huge, earth-shaking sound exploded out, and a dazzling gold light lit up the entire underground area in a flash, but it immediately became pitch black again, reverting to its normal state. Next, the golden brick that had returned to its original size turned again into a streak of gold light, flying to Han Li's side. Only the dying demonic beast was left in midair. Half of the inky flood dragon's head region had been smashed to a pulp, and the flood dragon eye had completely burst out of its socket, flying to an unknown location. The other eye naturally was still there, but it was also incessantly bleeding. The entire inky flood dragon seemed to be incredibly miserable. It seemed like this demonic beast was not far from dying. Seeing this, the young woman rejoiced in her heart and hurriedly pulled out a small crystal vase from her storage pouch, then muttered some words at the small vase. Then, she pointed at the inky flood dragon, and a few strands of black air came flying out of the lip of the vase, eerily wrapping around the inky flood dragon's body. Not long after, a small green flood dragon completely different from the previous inky flood dragon was forcibly shot out from within the inky flood dragon's body. Although it bared its fangs and brandished its claws, struggling fiercely, it was still slowly pulled into the small vase. When the young woman closed the vase, she closely assessed the miniature flood dragon inside of the few eyes vase and was unable to conceal the smile on her face. Her entire person began to beam with joy. Then, she glanced at the corpse of the inky flood dragon closely again. It had already lost the odor of death. She began to ponder. Han Li, seeing the young woman's activity, immediately realized that she had collected the primordial spirit of that flood dragon, although he didn't know what the inky flood dragon's primordial spirit could be used for. Based on the young woman's elated reaction, he knew it was considerably valuable. At this time, the young woman reached out her hand and retrieved the vermilion bird band. The inky flood dragon's corpse immediately fell from midair, happening to land right in front of Han Li's eyes. Since I took this flood dragon's primordial spirit, its corpse can be left for you. After all, it was killed by the two of us. The young woman said calmly, flying and landing next to Han Li's side. When Han Li heard this, he glanced at the perfectly satisfied young woman, then lowered his head and looked at the fleshy body of the inky flood dragon. He said melancholically in his heart, "It's easy for you to say. Giving this corpse to me, perhaps it's because you reckon that I have no use for it. In addition, this inky flood dragon is as sturdy as a turtle shell, and both you and I are very clear about this. It seems like you want to watch me make a fool out of myself." Thinking to this point, Han Li caused a cold light to flash across his hand, and a huge silver sword appeared in his hand. It was precisely the extremely strong magic tool from the barefooted man from earlier. Han Li wordlessly stabbed the huge sword with force. With a puchi, this silver sword actually sank 3 inches into the inky flood dragon's corpse. Although it wasn't stabbed too far in, it had finally broken through the flood dragon's defenses, causing the young woman to the side's jaw to drop in astonishment, unable to close it for some time. Han Li, seeing the young woman's expression, found it to be laughable in his heart and continued to wave around the sword, about to stab down again. "Halt, let me see this sword," said the recovered young woman slowly, staring at that silver sword with a look of amazement, causing Han Li to become startled. "What is there to be afraid of? I am a dignified core formation cultivator. What kind of treasures have I not seen before? It's just that this sword of yours is really somewhat strange and I'm somewhat curious is all," snapped the young woman, seeing that Han Li was somewhat hesitant, and rolled her eyes at him. Although the young woman's appearance was young, her charming, flirtatious gaze actually caused Han Li's heart to speed up, unable to control himself. "This sword really does have some problems. After I obtained it, I don't know why, but I have no way of controlling this sword. Otherwise, we would not have been in such tough straits when dealing with the inky flood dragon earlier." Since the young woman said so, Han Li could only force himself to hand over that sword to the young woman as he slowly explained. As of right now, he was still unwilling to fall out with the young woman. After all, based on her unhurried movements in the face of desperate circumstances, she should know how to get out of this place and should have a well thought out plan in her heart. And the young woman did not seem to be on guard against him. It seemed like she was somewhat clear about his thoughts, not afraid that he would attempt some kind of sneak attack. "Zeze. Sure enough, it's true, it really is too extravagant." The young woman sighed with regret after receiving the sword. After she had closely caressed it and identified it, her face revealed an expression of extortion. "What's the matter?" Han Li couldn't help but ask, seeing that the young woman had seemingly noticed something. "Nothing really. The reason why this silver sword is so sharp is only because silver essence was added into it, which is usually only used when refining magic treasures. In addition, its quantity is not small, more than enough to allow this item's quality to reach that of normal magic treasures," said the young woman indifferently, carelessly returning the sword to Han Li. "Silver essence?" said Han Li, a bit surprised. "Even if I told you, you wouldn't understand. Only true fire from a core formation cultivator or above would be able to extract raw materials for magic treasures in large quantities from pure silver. It's extremely precious. My vermilion bird band also contains this kind of material," said the young woman somewhat impatiently. Hearing this, Han Li cursed again in his heart. "I asked you precisely because I didn't know. If I knew, would I need to ask?" Although he had clearly seen the young woman's unwillingness to speak any further, Han Li still turned a blind eye and continued to ask, "Why can other people use this sword to meet enemies while I simply have no way to control it?" Seeing Han Li's manner of asking until the end, the young woman became somewhat unhappy in her heart, but she still replied indifferently, "The original owner of this sword had used a heart refining technique to refine it. This kind of method is extremely corrupt, so of course other people have no way of using it. Unless you were to melt down this sword and re-refine it, this sword can only be a useless object to other people. Han Li's expression was somewhat ugly. He originally had held very high hopes for this sword, but if what the other person said was true, his hopes would be completely dashed. A useless object? I don't see it. Can't I still use it now? Han Li said coldly and abruptly after a few moments of silence. Then, he began to control the silver sword in an unrestrained way, wildly stabbing at the flood dragon corpse. In the time it took to roll one's eyes, he had cut open the inky flood dragon. The young woman, seeing Han Li's extremely crude butchering appearance, couldn't help but knit her eyebrows and retreat a few steps, increasing her distance from Han Li. Then, she bleakly said, although this inky flood dragon had just entered grade 2, its entire body is full of valuable raw materials. Flood dragon skin can be refined into good armor, its sharp horns and claws are the most important raw materials in refining top-grade magic tools, and the remaining core liquid inside of it is also necessary to refine a few precious pills. Seemingly for no reason, the young woman explained everything clearly in great detail to Han Li, causing him to feel somewhat unsettled apart from being amazed. He didn't know what the other person's intentions were. What a pity. If this flood dragon had entered the 3rd grade, the flood dragon core within its forehead definitely could cause many core formation cultivators to fight furiously for it, whether for refining pills or magic tools. It's incredibly useful, sighed the young woman regretfully all of a sudden. Flood dragon core? What color is it? Is it this? Han Li suddenly pulled out a red, fist-sized sphere from the flood dragon's midsection, holding it and mentioning it to the completely surprised young woman. Yi. What is this? Did you retrieve it from the inky flood dragon's body? The young woman, feeling this was something unanticipated, couldn't help but scoot closer to Han Li to take a close look at it. It really is somewhat similar. It's only that this inky flood dragon has obviously only just entered the 2nd grade and cannot possibly produce a flood dragon core. In addition, this inky flood dragon is a vile, water attribute inky flood dragon, so its inner core should be blue. Let me touch it and see what it is. After gazing at it for some time, the young woman finally could not endure it anymore and took the soft, velvety sphere from Han Li's hand, stroking it a few times. But at this time, with a poo, the sphere actually burst open on its own for no reason, and a large cloud of red smoke immediately shrouded Han Li and the young woman within it.